With the Detroit Lions winning their first playoff game in 32 years and making it all the way to a conference championship is nothing short of a phenomenal season, especially when you have such young players. I mean, sure, why didn't they go for the field goal? Why did they go for it on 4th down? These are all things the Lions have to learn, and they're building up a massive dynasty. The Detroit Lions only made the playoffs 13 times since 1966, and they have the fewest playoff wins in all of the NFL. Everyone knows the story on how the Lions went from a winless team to having some glimmer of hope. How did it all happen? Well, we have to go all the way back to the Caldwell era, where he was the best coach they had in a long time, with 3 out of 4 winning seasons in his career. But aside from him, in 2014, William Clayford, the owner of the Lions, tragically passed away. The ownership of the Lions then transferred to his wife, Martha Ford, and man, it was a mess. The front office was in shambles. The coaching staff were confused, and they just didn't have enough talent. And probably the best player they had in this era retired.
The report is this morning that Calvin Johnson, one of the great wide receiver talents in the history of the National Football League, is going to retire.
All of the losing finally caught up to Calvin, just like it did for Barry Sanders all those years ago. Finally, the Lions were back at rock bottom, and somehow they managed to make it to the playoffs, but just got dominated by the Seahawks 26-6. Now, skip forward a couple years, and remember when I said the front office was in shambles? Well, they fired Jim Caldwell. Well, the reason was he was a little too good at his job, and little too bad in the playoffs. They replaced him for obviously the best hiring of all time in Matt Patricia. He was the defensive coordinator for the Patriots at the time, and everyone was excited. And even though the only notable names on their roster was Matthew Stafford and Darius Slay, things were looking good for the Detroit Lions. I mean, they were bound for an amazing 6-10 season. The dude was a dickhead and never won more than 6 games in his 3 seasons. But on June 23rd, 2020, the heavens decided to do the best thing ever.
Now, Lions owner Martha Firestone Ford stepping down. Her daughter Sheila Ford Hamp will take over as the team's principal owner and chair. Mrs. Ford is 94 years old.
Martha Ford stepped down as the Detroit Lions owner, and officially on November 28th, 2020, Sheila Ford took over the dumpster fire that was the Detroit Lions, and this was the best thing to ever happen. I mean, she fired Matt Patricia, Bob Quinn, and hired Brad Holmes as GM, and she also hired my 3rd favorite coach in the NFL, Danny Boy.
Today, I want to conclude our search process with the introduction of Dan Campbell as the new head coach of the Detroit Lions.
I mean, Sheila single-handedly changed the culture of the Lions in one swift move. And hiring a GM that knows how to rebuild a program, and hiring a former player as a head coach. It was perfect, down to the last minute detail. The first move these 3 made was on March 18th, 2021. The Lions traded Matthew Stafford to the Rams for Jared Goff. 2 first-round picks, and a 3rd-round pick. This was massive news for everyone, and people thought that Jared Goff would be a transition QB, but obviously that isn't the case with his new deal. And now we are all caught up. The Lions have had 2 amazing seasons, and they just won 2 playoff games this year. I honestly think this is going to be a dynasty for at least another 4 to 10 years. They just signed all their star players to massive deals, and they just keep on hitting on draft picks. I mean, you got Gibbs, Sam Laporta, Jameson Williams, and all of these were amazing, and I think that they were spot on this year with Terrion Arnold. If they don't make it to the conference, or even win it, I'd be shocked. Their only real challenge this year is the 49ers, and stay tuned for that video coming out soon. See ya.